The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I am joined this week by two very cool co-hosts.
Nate Heininger.
And Lauren Ash.
And this week we are talking about Dodgeball Academia, a sports RPG from developer Pocket Trap and published by Humble Games, and available on consoles and PC, and it's in Game Pass and all the places.
Yeah, you know, Raygan, we took some of our resources and we bought ourselves some Xboxes so we could expand the types of games we play. We got Laura and myself into Game Pass. First game you have us do is that, Weeb Wonder Labyrinth, which had some mixed reviews, and
It was good, okay?
And then our next game, we're doing a Sunday morning anime cartoon dodgeball game. I'm so glad that I got the next gen console. That said, this game is great. I'm very glad.
Next, we're playing Scarlet Nexus.
Yeah.
And we're gonna play Dragon Ball Z Fighters, and we're gonna play. What are all the other anime games I can squeeze out of Game Pass? It's like, I'm sure we'd find. Some
at least
more.
I wasn't on the last episode, so this is like back to back. These are the two games I've played in the last couple of weeks. Is that and then this. Now again, this game is great. I'm glad that we played it. It's like, Raygan, what'd you get me into again this time?
No, this one you blame me.
I think it was, yeah.
So
blame Laura.
This one you can blame me for, or thank me rather. I was paying attention at the end of the year when individual designers I like were tweeting out their games of the year, and almost all of them were atrociously long, and I'm never going to play them.
Yeah.
This is,
yeah.
But Greg Lobanoff, who created Chicory and Wondersong, tweeted out this as one of the many games they said were underappreciated in games of the year.
Yeah,
like,
not surprised. Not surprised that
I've seen it on a few other lists as well, and some podcasts included on their Game of the Year list. It was one of those games that I think was like a slow burn. I don't remember when it launched, and I think that was because it didn't, garner a lot of notice at launch. But being on Game Pass, I think, helped it to build a little bit of slow buzz over time, and I think a lot of people did end up finding this game and enjoying it quite a bit. And I'm really glad we finally got around to it, because it's I was immediately drawn to this, not because of its manga-iness, but more because I was hoping for something a little bit in the vein of Pyre, which it actually delivers a little bit of, sort of, kind of. It's
I was going for Golf Story personally.
That too.
Golf Story is probably better, but I guess I'm always looking for something to even like give me a fraction of what Pyre gave me, because I think you and I at least have been pretty
best Supergiant game. Fight me.
I mean,
Raygan, this is not. We have not come to argue about Supergiant games.
Yeah.
We're here talking about do not.
But we are now. So I would maybe say Hades is better still, but I love Pyre. Pyre is one of my favorite games. So it's like 1A and 1B. But anyway, I will say also, Pyre has basically ruined sports narrative games for me too, because this is a game where if you lose the sporting event, you just have to like redo it until you win. And Pyre is like, oh, you lost? Well, there's a narrative element to you having lost that battle. So I kept thinking like, oh, when I lose a dodgeball match, like, what are the implications of the tournament going to be when I lose in round one? And it's like, no, it's just, you have to try it again.
I mean, if you think about it as a episode of a cartoon, like, cool, you have the cartoon can't end halfway through.
Yeah, you're not banishing poor Balloony to hell or whatever, or actually releasing him from hell.
I need to talk to you guys about Balloony. I really don't understand what's going on with that dude. I really want
why
to know
is he in dodgeball school?
Yes, let's talk about the game.
Let's talk about
Laura,
what the game is.
Why don't you introduce it, since it was your pick?
Yes, and then we'll get into the existential crisis that is a balloon in a dodgeball.
Why was he there?
Damn,
he should not be there.
So here's the plot as it is. It's a sports anime, so like plot put in a giant quotation. First day to new school, you're late because you're a protagonist and you got late syndrome. So you literally roll in, if you're me, because I used the roll. That's basically your fast travel.
I want to talk about the rolling, but I won't derail too much.
Yeah. You just roll in, and you are in time for orientation, which is when everybody touches the magic spinning dodgeball that is embedded in a rock and powers the school and ended a war.
Well, it's a perpetual motion
device.
it's a perpetual motion device. So they use it to power the entire school. Why wouldn't you?
And when you touch it, you get magical dodgeball powers. Except
most of you do.
Gasp! You're the protagonist and nothing happens.
Ugh.
But no time to worry about that. You got to get in the dodgeball tournament and find a crew and be in a sports anime.
Yeah.
That's the plot.
Gather together a team of misfits and weirdos to win the day in the sports tournament against all odds.
In an entire universe that revolves around dodgeball. Every problem is solved by dodgeball. Mm-hmm. Most problems are created because of dodgeball. Everything is dodgeball. I want to live in this world.
So as far as the world is concerned, like,
I don't.
Yes, it's easy to like look at this and say, yeah, it's going for a sports anime or sports manga thing, but I think that's actually only one of its many influences. Mm-hmm. It has a sort of a self-awareness to it, a kind of a jokiness that isn't what you normally see in things like sports anime or sports manga. Instead, it's got, I think, the clearest comparison for me would be things like more Western style cartoons like OKKO, or maybe a little bit of Steven Universe. If you haven't seen OKKO, it's really charming. It's about a world where everybody is superheroes, but it's about a kid who works in a superheroic like corner store, like and weird wild stuff happens all the time. It's very self-aware and funny. And it has a lot of that vibe. It also has an art style that really reminds me of like, Cartoon Network of the last decade.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny you say like Steven Universe, and I guess I didn't really get that as much. What I have a very limited vocabulary and sort of experience with this world.
I compare a lot of things to Steven Universe. It was one of those things that got deep into my brain.
Same.
I think OKKO is the better comparison because it's got that more like wacky and like over the top action kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But instead of superheroes, it's dodgeball, I guess.
See, I thought of it more of a. I thought of it more of to me, it felt like a Pokemon game.
But if we're talking art style, I'll say that if you're having trouble picturing this, we're talking like hand-drawn 2D on top of a 3D world. So if like, you've played Paper Mario, that's kind of the effect here.
That's a good one.
Except it's a very much a Cartoon Network style, so it doesn't have any of that Nintendo DNA. But like that's it does not play at all like Paper Mario. So Nate's gameplay comparison to Pokemon is much more accurate.
Or like a Dexter's Laboratory sort of thing.
That's a good one.
The sort of exaggerated character designs, the very like cartoony. Yeah, I can definitely see
Girls.
Powerpuff Girls.
This feels like, in a way, it feels like a really good licensed game based on a cartoon.
I thought it was. I honestly, I was pretty surprised because I did look that up. I was expecting this to be an existing IP because the character designs are so over the top and specific, and like there's a lot of unique characters that seem like it just felt like there was stuff that I would have been like, if I was a fan of the show, be like, oh, Cubo's there, there was a lot of these things that made me think it was an existing IP, and I actually think that's a credit to the world building of the game, is that it felt pretty like it.
It feels like a characters and world that could support a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters and a lot of like interesting characters and interesting design characters. They all have great little idle animations. This game it's a lot of dialogue and it's a lot of reading, even if none of it actually really matters or is really going anywhere, because it's all just serving to get you to the next dodgeball match. You are watching a lot of a cartoon over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. So let's get down to brass tacks. Let's talk about Balloony.
I do feel we ought to set up a little bit about the main character Otto first.
Sure,
before we get to everybody's
we gotta
favorite
talk about
Balloony.
the protagonist.
Well,
it is
There's
the
not that much to say, but he is this sort of like he's this like little short. He's got a real like shonen anime like protagonist vibe,
that
but
spiky
also
hair.
yeah, but also like through a lens of almost like parody. So he's got this idle animation that has him like putting his hand up to his nose in a weird way. It looks like he's kind of like thumbing his nose at the camera or something. He's got this like very like snarky or sly kind of look to him. He's very enthusiastic about dodgeball, but his dad doesn't want him to be at the dodgeball school. He's from a long line of referees.
Wow.
He's supposed to be going to referee school, but he wants to rebel and go to Dodgeball Academia.
Where they're like, where are you from? And he's like, and he makes up a school, and they're like, okay, welcome to school. Welcome to Dodgeball School. Here's your dorm room.
Yeah. and your flame powers. Here you go, buddy.
Yeah.
Why not? And also, this is the type of game where the person who runs the shop literally is like, "Oh my god, I love a protagonist. Come shop in my store."
Well, we kind of touched on it already, but like the writing, this game is jokey as hell. It is constantly, and it's very like irreverent modern humor, and so.
It's very self-aware. It's doing a lot of like commenting on its own inspirations. So any
Scott
chance
Pilgrim
it
vibes.
has-
Scott Pilgrim,
yeah, very good comparison too. Because any chance it has to like do a joke that it thinks you, the player who is probably also really into sports anime or really into whatever, like it's very self-referential and like will never let a opportunity for a joke go by, which isn't. They don't always land, but it was mostly pretty funny.
It's fine. It's the shotgun effect. It goes for jokes all the time, and some of them are good, some of them are not. But if they're not, it doesn't matter. You're going to skip right past it anyway. But they are at least in a consistent tone, and it is pretty frequent. We already said that. Like to give you an example, like the character, one of the early characters, literally says, "Wow, you have protagonist vibes," and like the words protagonist vibes are like sort of like wavy in the text bubble, if that makes sense. They're going up and down, and they do that a lot to add like, I guess, emphasis to things. And they talk about his protagonist vibes pretty regularly. So it's stuff like that is I think it's kind of funny. I don't know if it was even super necessary, but I love a good joke, so why not? It's a silly game.
Yeah, it's stuff like that made it feel even more like it was a licensed IP.
Yes.
Making fun of itself.
Yes.
I do love that it's not. I feel like, especially when you get into the secondary characters who are incredibly well drawn and do not have any sort of arc whatsoever.
No.
Like that pairing is so cartoon, where like you can describe them in a sentence. Do they need any kind of emotional anything? No, they're just your crew.
Yeah,
they're joke machines.
Well,
it's perfect,
and they're like
for what it is.
They are like this is an alien world. There's like Cubo has a cube head. There's like a little vampire girl. There's like a giant purple Frankenstein guy. The principal is like 20 feet tall. It seems like
there's another gorilla teacher.
Yeah, there's the lunch lady is massive. It's such a strange universe. Again, we keep saying it, but this really, I think it's an accomplishment that it felt like a TV show so much. And I bet if this game had been like, a top seller, like we would get a TV show from this game. It'd be a pretty easy transition.
Okay.
So I'm starting
Now
a Kickstarter. I'm starting a Kickstarter for the Balloony. What?
So in case it's not clear, like there's the character designs are so varied that like there's definitely characters who are like clearly not human, and look weird in various different ways. Some people have, cube-shaped heads, or have, or are look like there's some sort of an animal or that sort of thing. Balloony is introduced during the initial opening ceremony, and he's named Balloony, and so that's weird in and of itself, but his head is a big round balloon. And initially in the plot, he can't play dodgeball because he's worried that it will pop his head.
Then why are you at balloon school, Balloony, or dodgeball school?
And really, if you think too hard about it, you're going to delve into body horror.
Really. And the game, in your dorm, there are spare tanks everywhere. And then he's like, oh, that's dark. And then just walks away.
That's so strange.
It's so good. And Balloony, eventually does join your team and does learn to play dodgeball. And he is a little more fragile than some of the other characters, but not to the degree I was expecting.
Yeah.
When they first introduced Balloony, and his whole deal is that if he gets hit with a dodgeball in the head, he might die because his head is a balloon. I was like, okay, so he's going to be on my side as a side character, but he's never going to play dodgeball with me because that would be fucked up.
Balloony,
yeah, he does join you, and he does play dodgeball, and he can get beamed with a dodgeball without his head exploding. It just sort of half deflates a little, and it never really goes into that. I think it's a good joke. I think it would have been funnier if he was more fragile and there was made a big deal out of him getting popped or something. But I can see why they didn't go that direction, because if they're going to have him on your team, it would have been really annoying if he was that fragile.
This is a very minor spoiler if you care about equipment you may get later in the game, but you can get something that if you get down to one hit point, you become incredibly powerful. And I kind of was like, what if that was Balloony the whole time? He's
like a glass cannon sort of thing.
Yeah. Glass cannon is an option later, but I kind of wish that had been
him from the beginning.
They released Balloony can join your team, I think, on day 3. I kind of was like, what if Balloony was held back to day 7 and he's just the most fragile boy with an arm of steel?
And if he gets hit, it becomes a roguelike, and Balloony's gone.
Oh no!
Oh shit!
We all stan Balloony. By the way, I do think this is a good game for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, not to play. It's actually quite difficult. We'll come to that when we talk about the dodgeball mechanics. It's a kind of a difficult game.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's easy modes that you can turn on that might make this more playable. I think Laura may have tried a little bit of that.
Yeah. So it's not easy mode. The difficulty meters go from 0 to 400%, and they're both set it for damage and for damage you do and damage you take. They're set at 100%.
That's interesting.
So you can set it up so you deal 4 times as much damage as you would, or you can set it that you take you're basically invincible. So
That's
you can
cool.
completely change either way. So if you are doing a lot of damage but losing on hit points, you can adjust. And if you are playing with a kid, you can make them invincible. There's lots of ways to adjust depending on how you think it's hard.
That's really smart. I mean, I never really experimented with that stuff, but I'm glad it's there. I think that just the general cartoon world nature of this though is great for kids. So if you're the sort of person who wants to play a game that your kid might enjoy watching you play, if they're the sort of kid that will tolerate that, this might work really well.
Assuming they can either read or you're comfortable.
Of course you're going to narrate for them.
Yeah.
If you
got an older kid who gets frustrated by losing, you can just make him invincible.
Totally.
Just saying, there's a lot of text. So if it's a kid who can't read, you're committing to reading. It's a lot of text. So
we're not saying this is Moby Dick, which is in a different game we played this year.
It's not Tux and Fanny, but it's like a full cartoon,
And I thought I'd particularly bring that up because Shane really wanted to be here tonight for this one. He had a different obligation tonight when we had to record.
An anniversary obligation.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yes, happy anniversary, Shane. But his kid really liked this game, and he sent me a recording of him talking to his kid about the game, and his kid was also a big Balloony stan. So I think Balloony appeals to one and all ages. What were the characters in the dodgeball game that we played?
Balloony, Square Cube, what were the other ones? Balloony. I think one was called Otto. Otto was the boy.
Otto?
Do you remember the girl's name?
Fina!
Do we want to talk about any other characters before we move on to talking about the crunchy dodgeball, mechanics? I, for one, was a pretty big fan of the third companion you pick up, or maybe fourth, I forget, Suneko. She's the tough girl, and she has a cool additional dodgeball mechanic. We'll talk about these a little bit later, where when instead of catching dodgeballs, she has a sort of offensive hit back mechanic that's super powerful, but pretty touchy to use because you have to hold you have sort of a bat, and you have to hold a button to like prepare your swing for a moment before you're able to return a serve. So she's tricky to use, but really powerful, and I thought pretty cool. But there's a lot of other really good characters too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even the side characters. I am a big fan of the weird lunch lady who is just like, it's capitalism,
she's very
baby.
She's very pro capitalism. Yeah.
So like you're supposed to do a challenge around the world and like around the game, like do little challenges, get little tokens, and she's like, "Here's the challenge: capitalism.
Yeah.
Go get me money."
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know if I necessarily have an additional character that I want to talk about, but I thought it was so funny how much they like. Everything is dodgeball all the time. Like every problem is solved by dodgeball. There's a ton of side quests in this game, and it could range from like I've lost my glasses, or hey, I dropped my wallet in this trash, or whatever. Like,
I talk to a water fountain and it says these kids suck.
Yeah, but all of them are going to end in a dodgeball match, and it just cracks me up every single time the way like you have to go and you have to get an item from one of the school teachers, and he's like, oh yeah, I'll give that to you, but I have to go to the bathroom. Will you watch my post for me while I go to the bathroom? And you're like, yeah, sure, of course. He goes, oh, just be aware sometimes kids come up here to challenge whoever's standing at this post, so just be aware. And he goes to the bathroom, and then you do like a series of 4 dodgeball matches against increasingly difficult groups, and it's sort of a endurance thing because you have one pool of hit points and you have to beat all of these guys. And then he comes back from the bathroom and he's like, how'd it go? And you're like, hey, no problem over here, and you get the item. Everything is resolved, or created by dodgeball. And of course it is, because that is the only thing that there is to do in this game is to play dodgeball. But I thought it was funny and a good effort to like, they try to add variance into this game around the story and like what your characters are doing, but they never stray away from everything is going to be a dodgeball match all the time. And there are, and why it felt like Pokemon to me too, is there are like random encounters where you're just walking around and a kid will run up to you and be like, I need to battle now, and then you're in and then there's like the infirmary, which is like the nurse's station, when all your little crew is beat up or knocked unconscious because they got hit so hard by the dodgeballs. You go to the nurse's station and they heal you right up, so you can go and do more random encounters with dodgeball. And
also just super fun how all your posse like goes into your pocket until they're needed.
You walk around as Otto. Yeah, you walk around as Otto, and then once you encounter somebody to talk to, it's like, bleh, and everyone just spills out of you, but full sized. And most of the characters are bigger than Otto.
Yeah.
So, before we dig into the dodgeball mechanics, other stuff about the sort of general RPG-iness of it, there's some weird stuff about this. It's pretty unusual to play an RPG that is set so tightly within a single location. This is literally just the dodgeball school, which is, a couple of floors and a handful of rooms. It's grounds, and then some areas outside it, things like the parking lot and the woods out back. Like, not a whole lot else. that's good, but it's still pretty expansive. So like walking from the dorm all the way to the dodgeball classrooms is a pretty long hike. It's not like super long, but like we're talking about, you know, in the realm of like 5 minutes maybe to walk the whole way. You can roll to go a little faster, which can make that a little more fun and maybe a little faster.
Why the rolling thing is so funny to me. They make so many goofy choices in this game, and the rolling one is really emblematic of that.
Yeah, instead of running, basically turn into a dodgeball. Hey, it's that kind of world.
But you also you go really fast, and you have like an inertia behind you where you can't really take turns very well, and like in order to stop, you have to like press jump or hit something. So it's this really like loosey goosey. You can get going really fast, but you're not really in control in the way that you would think you would be, and so you end up just, at least for me, like bouncing your way through the school campus all the time, just thumping into things, into other students, hitting stuff all the time. And that decision is so funny to me because, you know, why not run? Or like there are literally bikes all over the campus. Why isn't it like it's not like Pokemon where you
no bikes, only balls.
Yeah, but there are bikes there, so it's not like they don't know what a bike is.
And oh my God, the extraness of the rolling. It's not just the inertia and the running into stuff. It's the haptic feedback they put on the controller. So when you're rolling, you get this little thunk, 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 thunk with the controller. And then when you hit something, the whole thing shakes like you just had a concussion.
And
the animation is extremely
no one else is rolling around either. There are kids literally running all the time. There are people, they've done all the animations. They're jogging. Yeah, there's like a track.
Well, that's why you're the protagonist.
Yeah,
you truly become the dodgeball.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a friend in your crew who literally rolls as like one of her defense moves in the game, and yet like there's no other Minas running around.
I never saw anyone else roll, and it's just so funny to me. It's a great choice. It's just one of a million choices that this game makes that I think are so funny and strange.
Mm-hmm. Structure-wise, the game is set up in, of course, like chapters or days. So, you know, you'll have each day has a kind of a story in and of itself. So, you know, like you have a day where you have to, you know, school stuff. There's like a chapter where you have to like take care of a quote unquote baby ball, for example. You know, the kind of like classic high school sitcom plot where you have people who have to like pretend to take care of a potato or a bag of rice or something as a baby, as it was a baby all day, that kind of thing. Lots of that kind of stuff, little mini plots within each day. But each day usually culminates in a round of the big tournament that's kind of building up to the end of the game. And each day usually involves a bunch of running around. So like, you know, you have to go to school, take a class. Then once you've learned a new mechanic for the day, it adds new mechanics constantly. We'll talk about the dodgeball mechanics. Then you get sent off on some new little quest for the day, which involves, you know, run over here to this side of the campus, run to the other side of the campus, run to this side of the campus, and so on and so on. If I have some complaints about the game, my main ones are that sometimes those could start feeling a little bit like, God, I just ran back from the forest and you want me to run all the way there again, that kind of thing. At least the Nate was mentioning there's a lot of like little random encounters, and at least they are one time. Like there'll be a person standing in a spot, and you will walk past them and they will battle you. And once you've battled that person, you're not going to do another battle in that location again until the next day. So you can kind of clear the map, which is a mercy here. But it does at some points start feeling a little bit like, wow, there's a lot of text, and wow, there's a lot of running back and forth. Punctuated by these fun dodgeball matches, and that was what I was enjoying the most. But like, I will say that the like RPG stuff started really fun and would be really fun at parts, but it did wear on me a little bit, especially towards the middle. Did you guys feel the same about that, or did you have a better feel with it?
I agree, but I also, that's not usually my favorite thing in a game anyway. So I'm probably biased in that, like, the dodgeball was my favorite part of this game. It made me think of like a worse version of this game was that game with the MOBA in the middle of it that we did, where all that was like cutesy, but like not nearly as
right.
You're thinking of
I've referenced
I
it.
was gonna say Blast City, but that's not it. It's
Button City. Yeah, Button City is
Button City was okay. It's fine. It has but this is a much better version. I would definitely prefer this.
Yeah, there's a much better
version of a similar kind of thing.
But like that game too, all I really ended up wanting to do is play the MOBA that's in the middle. And in this game too, like ultimately the dodgeball is why you're here. And unless you really get into these characters, like it's going to drag at times. At least that's how it felt for me too.
Yeah, I think this is one of the few games I've been able to play like a normal person. Often we're playing games in compressed time, so I'm trying to, get through it for a night or two. With the exception of at the end, because I wanted to get further in the game faster, I did cheese the difficulty to get plot towards the end in case someone's got to check the game for weird stuff, and this time that was me. But before that, I think I was able to play this, a day in real life is a day in the game.
That's nice.
Which is a real pleasure because often we're trying to do like 2 or 3 at once just because we're trying to get it in.
Yeah.
So I think when you have that, the only downside is I would forget like, what button does 2 or 3 days would pass in real life and I'd be like, I don't remember the catch button and there's no reminders. I had been playing Hades and Hades will always remind you what all the buttons do every single time you play it.
Yeah.
This game does not remind you. So if you take a few days, I would forget what things were and I would look it up online and be like, what is catch?
I had that problem a lot too. Let's talk about the dodgeball mechanics there, because like that is probably I had that exact same problem, but it's mostly because it does layer a lot of complexity in. It starts very simple. Mm-hmm. It starts with basically an identical dodgeball system to, if you've ever played a dodgeball video game, it's probably a lot like this. If you've played like Super Dodgeball on the NES or any of its various spin-offs and successors, I can't think of any other dodgeball games that aren't related to the Super Dodgeball.
Don't even think about another video game. If you've ever actually played real dodgeball, this game starts with the same components of real dodgeball. You are each on one side, you each have a side, and there's balls, and you can pick one up, and you can either throw it or you can catch it. The only difference would be that everyone has hit points, and you have different strengths, and the stronger you are, the more damage your dodgeball will do when it hits. And that's
catching isn't an out either.
And
catching
is just a vol.
That's true. Yeah. So unlike real dodgeball, like you can dodge a ball and it will fall to the ground somewhere, and you can pick it up and throw it back. But yeah, if you can successfully catch a ball with perfect timing, rather than getting beamed by it, then it doesn't count as an out. Yeah. So you
just absorb it. You just have it now, which is actually increasingly valuable because of the back line element that happens. But we'll get to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it layers on additional stuff. I may not get this in quite the right order, but the first thing I believe it introduces is like your super move, which I think it calls the Baltimate moves. Baltimate moves are wait, sorry. Actually, I think that comes a little later.
It does the charge throw.
Charge throw first. Yeah, charge throw. So you rather than just chucking the ball, you can hold down the throw button and get a different effect. And every character has a different charge throw. Your main guy, Mario, Mr. Protagonist, has a fireball, which is, of course, he does because he's a protagonist. Mm-hmm. But everybody else has something slightly different. So like Balloony has like kind of a thing that moves weird in little spirals and can do multiple hits if it hits multiple times as it sort of spins past somebody. Mina has electric balls. Other characters have other stuff that I'm not remembering. But like every character, including the enemies, have unique charge throws, which is sort of the main thing that distinguishes them from each other.
And also, you can kind of like jump in the air and throw balls on people from the top, and like make them stupefy for a few seconds. I think you have that from the beginning, but like it's not spelled out.
I never really did that.
I did it by accident, and then I was like, "Oh, this is way easier." If
not
you can
every
do
character
it.
Can jump though. So
True. If
Otto
your character
can jump, but other characters have other like dodge type moves. So Otto can jump. Mina can roll. I forget what Balloony
he can jump.
does.
Balloony can jump, and he kind of floats a little.
Floats.
Yeah, he's a little floaty. He's like Luigi, in Mario.
So that's when I
too.
use the Stupefy, because Balloony would like float in the air, and then I'd have him like throw a ball down and knock someone out.
I should have made more use of that. I did not do that very much. And then it layers on a ton more mechanics. So the ultimate moves I mentioned earlier are like super moves. You have to build up a meter, which you can do by just sort of through regular play. I think it happens when you catch balls.
Yeah, and then you eventually can. There's a button you can hold where if there is a ball on the other side, so if the enemy has at least one ball, you can hold, at least on the Xbox controller, Y to focus, which basically makes you sit still and burst into flames, and it increases your ultimate meter at a very high clip. Ultimate meter is a funny word, but it increases that at a higher clip. But it's risk reward, because now you're just sitting there and you can only do it when they have a ball. So, you have to.
So when there's actual risk, you can't just like hoard all the balls and sit there with them while you build up your.
Oh, yeah. And like real dodgeball, if you hold on to a ball for too long, it will explode in your hands.
Yes.
So you have to, you can't just get all of them and hold them forever. It's a pretty forgiving timer, though. I never really had that as a problem.
Yeah, I didn't have trouble with that much. They'll blink for a while, and it's very clear that that's going to happen. So,
yeah.
And let's see. The last thing. Oh, maybe what am I forgetting? It layers in some additional stuff, but some of it's condition. Some of it's like situational. So, like Laura mentioned, the thing where characters will go to a back line. It kind of reminded me of like the Bomberman games, where if a character gets out, then they kind of are still, even if they're out, if they're knocked out, they're like still in play, kind of hanging out on the border of the match, and can throw in balls from behind you. And if your characters get outed or like knocked out, then you can still actually throw balls to them, and then they can throw balls at your opponents from behind, which can sometimes be useful.
It's a pretty big, I think, like difficulty multiplier, but I think it's pretty interesting because it kind of balances dodgeball in a good way, because a lot of these games are 3 versus 3. And as you knock someone out, it does become 3 versus 2 on that like main line, but they just go behind you. And so now if you're not catching the ball when they throw it at you, it's very likely that the other guy from that team is going to get it and now be able to throw it at you from behind. And they can do all of their normal charge moves and whatnot. So it can get kind of chaotic, especially when you have it where if you're playing against a team of 3, when they're down to their last person, it is not easier because they're down to their last person. At least for me, it was a lot harder because you have way more, you're in the crossfire way more, and it's way more challenging to get that last guy out when in like real dodgeball, when it's like one person left and you have the whole team, it's just a massacre. Like it's actually a lot harder, I thought. And I thought that was interesting. It like the thing that it was most surprising to me about this entire game was that the dodgeball was kind of hard. And
it gets really hard at times. There were some like later game and some levels or like battles that weren't even like really plot critical stuff.
Yeah,
that sometimes I had a really hard time with.
Yeah, a lot of the ones were the like endurance where you have to win multiple rounds in a row.
Yes,
and they're coming in fresh, and all the HP that you lose is carrying over from match to match to match, and like.
Yeah, that was another thing that surprised me about this. I played other sports RPGs, but usually they don't have this mechanic of like having a certain amount of HP that you have to conserve or replenish with healing items.
Well, but you can't use the healing items during a match.
Run.
So I didn't, other than the convenience of like not having to go all the way back to the infirmary. And a couple points where you're kind of like locked into an area, like they give you a lot of healing items that I basically never used because I would just go back to the infirmary, to heal.
Yeah. I think it would have been perfectly fine to redo this so that your HP is replenished after every battle. And if they still wanted some of these like gauntlets where you have to fight several battles in a row, you could still do that. There's still way, just don't leave the battle screen or something, bring in another team or something. But like I found it pretty frustrating and a little annoying to have to either run back to heal or use a bunch of healing items. It was never like a lack of them. So like they give you a ton of healing items. It's just a little annoying to go into the menu constantly and be continually feed. And it doesn't even give you like a way to filter the items by what's a healing item and what isn't. So I was constantly going through the item list and like feeding food items to my characters to like top off their HP by like 25 HP at a time. I was just like, this isn't fun. It's not really necessary. Yeah. And I would have kind of preferred that it just reset your HP before every battle. And if they really wanted to have like, times where your HP didn't reset, build some other way to do that. That's fine. It's just, as is, it just sort of expects you to go into the menu and eat a bunch of snacks in between every battle.
It does feel fun to have like, picture these like little children, just, it's all junk food, just like powering through. Also, the allergies is cute that people like and dislike.
I wanted to bring that up too. Although I will say one of the items
it's still annoying, but it's cute.
Pizza with ketchup. And it's like, but yeah, I thought that was, I thought the like and dislike thing was cool. So besides healing items, there are your standard RPG things that are like, eat this, drink this pineapple juice, and you'll have +1 agility for the rest of the game. A permanent increase to agility. But then you'll see that there's of your party, 2 people don't like pineapple juice, so they just get the base level of whatever it is. But there'll be someone who loves pineapple juice, and if you give it to them, they get +2 agility. And I thought that was, besides it being cute, for like a cartoon, I also thought it was nice because you start every battle as Otto, but you can switch between different people. But to me, if you were like really min-maxing and really wanting, you'd just super buff Otto, but they build in a way to incentivize you to use your stat increase stuff for people other than Otto in a way that is actually just cute and like world building. And I thought
very natural.
Yeah.
That's true. That was a really good mechanic. You're right. I still don't love the item mechanics, but it was well implemented for what it was.
Well, it's all very simple. You have 2 item slots per character. They're not really going to like make or break anything, but they kind of help you on the margins. And so, it was fine. And I liked the part that I just talked about. But I did like that this game was more challenging than you'd expect. The game is so cute that if also the dodgeball was just easy end to end, I think that you would not like it as much, And so
you have to be strategic.
Yeah.
Like I actually had to think about when I was swapping characters. I couldn't just play one until one died. I mean, I did, but later on, I couldn't just play until Otto passed out and then play Mina until she passed out. I actually had to think about like who I'm swapping and like, oh, Balloony's got the heal
he can
thing.
heal,
and like, he's got to be swapped
play
to the
Otto
front.
for a little while and then swap into Otto into Balloony so he can heal Otto. That kind of thing. That stuff worked well.
And that was another that was surprising to me again because this game was so light and goofy, and then you get into these dodgeball matches and you just get pummeled by these little
just owned
like children, like because you can sometimes they can throw the dodgeball so fast and there'll be up to 5 dodgeballs on the court at a single time, so they can get chaotic. And if they get all 5 on the enemy side and they just wail them on you, you can get like chain locked into just getting smashed.
You just get passed out, that they hit your dead body.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I just got smoked by like a tiny wolf girl, and I guess I'm gonna retry, because it just says defeated, and your options are either retry or load from last save or quit to title screen. And again, I was thinking of Pyre when I was like, oh man, it would have been awesome if I just got booted from the tournament and had to do like a whole other game where I, was like a spectator. But anyway, it was.
Now you have to go be a referee.
Yeah. Like I failed out of my fake dodgeball school. So I'm glad that they put so much effort into making a actually interesting and pretty complicated and diverse dodgeball game. I do agree, Raygan, that there were times where I was like, the challenge is becoming less fun and more annoying in how I have to like manage the fun. But for the most part,
it was just like certain fights that ended up with like a weird difficulty spike. I can remember one where one of the guys that you're fighting has a ultimate move that just does like this like massive wave of balls that I could just never get. Like it felt like I would get hit and it would just like lock me in a chain or a pattern.
Yeah.
And I would just be completely unable to, and then lost every time. And eventually I realized, okay, if this move is going off, first of all, attack that guy first. But if this move's going off, I need to, get over here.
Swap over to Balloony, let him eat all of them.
Immediately let Balloony, take over. But it is like weird because it's not super hard. Most of the battles are pretty easy. They're fun, but they're pretty easy. And then occasionally you get those weird little difficulty spikes, and that can be a little demoralizing until you get past them. And
and the game starts like, I think I'm sure this was most people's experience that I won most of the first hour or so, if not more, of dodgeball matches. And I'm like, I actually started thinking like, oh man, is this going to be one of those games where like it's all cute end to end, and like I never really had a challenge in it, even though it's a ostensibly like a sports game to a degree. And for better or worse, that was not the case. It was actually challenging, and I like that difficulty meter, the way that you what you were talking about, Laura, the up to 400%. I think that's a cool way to handle it. Because I could definitely see everyone's going to have their sweet spot on what are those meters. And I think that's an interesting
they're not
way.
One and done. Like the thing I liked about it was at the beginning of the game, if you're like, this is too easy, you can up the difficulty. And then like when it gets too hard, you can put it back down.
Yeah.
Or if you're playing with kids and they want to take the controller, you can be like, 1 second, you can put them basically on like where they take almost no damage, and the kid's still going to like feel powerful, but not have you're not going to have a crying person.
I mean, I cried a little bit.
I mean, we all did.
Yeah.
It's okay. So one last thing on the gameplay being pretty complicated. I mean, after a while, when you've got all the mechanics, they start adding like elemental balls and weirdness with the setting that I won't spoil, like more party members. So like it still keeps layering up. I'll say that like towards the end, there's not new elements. It's mostly just mastering and actually having strategy.
Yeah.
And you actually do really have to think for each game and pay attention to powers. So I was surprised how long you're getting new abilities really, this could have been like Golf Story where you're just getting better clubs, but you're still golfing at the end of the day. And this was, oh no, dodgeball is extremely complicated.
It's mayhem.
When you go to school with dodgeballs as the only curriculum.
Imagine a world where everything revolves around dodgeball. Yeah, you're going to get bored after a while, and you're going to start introducing, flamethrower balls. Yeah, there's magic. Yeah. It made me think of like briefly. I was thinking too of like games like Tony Hawk's Underground, where like it's a universe that I don't know if any of you guys did either of you play those games, the Tony Hawk Underground games?
I only a little. I think the only Tony Hawk Underground game I played is the one on the Game Boy Advance, so I can't claim to have had like a particularly good experience.
Yeah, I don't think that.
I mean, I don't know.
It counts, but it's a little different.
It's all right. The Tony Hawk games on GBA, like they did their best. They made a good effort, but. Yeah, that's where I'm coming from with most of the. In fact, I never played any of the Tony Hawks except.
Man, that was huge part of my teenage years was the Tony Hawk games, and the Tony Hawk Underground games were the RPG games, and I loved them. And it was like, what if the entire world was set up for people who skateboard? You know, like
Yes.
just everything is everything is grindable, everything is a ramp, everywhere you go, every direction you might want to go, there is some smooth flat plane for you to be able to get to there on your skateboard. And that's how this game felt to me, but with Dodgeball. Like, what if there was a world where everything had been started at Dodgeball and ended at Dodgeball? I like it. I'd love to see, more games create worlds around weird little sports.
It's just like the real world, only instead of capitalism, it's Dodgeball.
Well, this game has both. The capitalist lunch lady.
So I will confess here that I did not finish this game. This is on the longer side for the games that we play. I'd say that 10 hours is probably a minimum with this one. And I spent about 8 with it. And I think I was pretty close to the end, but I'm not even that sure. So I do think this is a totally a game worth playing, especially like Laura was saying earlier, that this game is sort of like structured in these like days that each kind of feels like a little self-contained thing. So it does respect your time in the ways that we hope for with this sort of thing. So I definitely recommend checking this game out. I don't think this is just a good Game Pass game. This is a good game regardless. If you have a Switch and you're not doing the like Xbox thing or whatever, this is a great game. It'd probably be great on Switch. I really think this would be a good Switch experience. And I would absolutely recommend this to anybody who likes the sports game type of thing. I forgot to mention it earlier, but like the other game that this really, really reminded me of, and I'll just put in a brief plug for, is the Captain Tsubasa game that came out last year. I think I made that a What's Making Me Happy This Week thing, like sometime last year. Do you guys remember that? It doesn't matter. It's another anime sports. It doesn't have quite as much of the RPG stuff. It's literally just like sports with anime cutscenes in between, but like it's also great if you want the sort of like over the top play a season of a show in an anime kind of thing. But it's a really fun thing to do. Like there's a reason that people like sports anime or sports manga, even if they're not sports people, or even if they're not into that particular sport. And it's because it's just a really fun conceit. It's a really fun way to like mash characters together, right? And that's what this game does really well. It takes some really jokey, silly characters and it mashes them together on dodgeball fields, and it's really cute and fun.
Yeah,
I had a lot of fun with it.
Well, sports games too, especially ones like this, allow you to have like brutal rivalries and stuff, but it's not like combat. Right.
At the end of the day, everyone walks away from the dodgeball field and maybe they're mad, but they're not dead. It's fine.
They actually, there's one of your main, rivals in this game. They're like, I'm going to destroy you. Da, da, da. And they're like, we'll see you after the game at the shop or whatever. And they're like, you're friends? Like, yeah, we're best friends. Well, we hate each other when we play dodgeball, but after dodgeball, we're best friends, So, I really, there's a few things we've mentioned throughout that make this game not like perfect, but I mean, rarely do we have a flawless game. So I really enjoyed this game. I like sports games generally. And I thought I was impressed by the degree of complexity and thought that went into the dodgeball game. And then the rest of it's cute and silly, and your mileage may vary on how much you enjoy it, but you can just spam B if you don't really enjoy it that much to get through it and get to more dodgeball. So I'd check it out. And like Raygan said, Game Pass or otherwise, like I think it's worth your time. I think you'll enjoy it. Give it a shot. It's a fun game.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that is Dodgeball Academia. Just to recap, it is on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, the Xbox Series, Nintendo Switch, and Windows, and it is on Game Pass as well if you are on that platform. So definitely thumbs up. And we've got a little bit of time here at the end, so let's do another one of our classic segments. What's making us happy this week? Laura, what's making you happy this week?
Well, this week I got a notification from the library that a cookbook I'd put on hold a while back is in. I do this because I see a cookbook on the internet and I try a recipe from it and I find it horribly complicated. I don't want to try the rest of the book. So I've decided to be very cautious now. I borrow a cookbook from the library, try 1 or 2 recipes, see if it's a hit. This time I checked out the book Snacking Cakes because everyone on the internet was really into this book.
Snacking cakes?
Yes, simple treats for anytime cravings. And what makes this book good?
Who's bringing the snacking cakes?
I am, because so here's the thing that makes this cookbook great. It is baking for lazy people. The promise of this book is everything is one bowl and it goes in an 8 by 8 inch cake pan.
It's a true
every
snacking
single
cake.
recipe in the book.
Yeah.
And also the idea that they're going to be, very quick, like put everything in a bowl, put in the oven. They even say in the intro for like the method that there is a time and place for creaming butter and sugar until it's light and fluffy, adding eggs 1 at a time. But folks, this isn't it. These cakes do not require any creaming or electric equipment. You just need to make sure the batter's mixed. I'm like, yes,
all right.
Power to the people. This is my kind of baking. I've tried the really fussy stuff. I've tried really elaborate methods. Sometimes you just want to have said you made something and make what you want when you want it. And you don't want to completely destroy your kitchen, go out and buy a bunch of extra ingredients. So if you're actually a baker, the fun stuff about this is almost all the cakes have like yogurt or buttermilk or oil in them. So like there's other fats and then they come together real fast. I made the jam cake last night as a test, which the only thing I had to do was buy some sour cream. And I had every other ingredient on hand, including blueberry jam.
Sounds sticky.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. It just makes a really pretty swirl little cake.
Now,
and it was fluffy as heck.
Laura's holding up pictures, and I'll tell you what, it's a damn fine-looking snacking cake you got there, Laura.
It is. And there's, cakes of all kinds.
Cakes of all kinds?
I'm probably going to make let's see, the ones I had my husband Mark that he wants me to make include a lemony olive oil cake.
That sounds great.
A double apple cake.
That sounds great.
Double apple.
And a corn
One
cake
apple's
with honey.
just not enough. Ooh.
And
I love corn-based stuff like cornbread.
Real American.
Yeah, and that's not even counting like the whole chapter on like stuff you can put in chocolate cakes. Like including hazelnuts, which we happen to have a big bag of. It's like, yeah, let's make a hazelnut chocolate cake with Nutella in the middle. Like, and let's do it in about 3 minutes of stirring because I'm very lazy.
All right, ShortCon 2022. Laura's bringing the cakes.
I'm making the snacking cakes.
Snacking cakes.
I mean,
Laura, I've already added this to cart on Amazon. Thank you.
Yeah, it's literally like this is the opposite of the cakes you make on Great British Baking Show. The goal is you want a cake, and then like an hour later you should have a cake.
We're used to more like gorging cakes. These are your snacking cakes.
Yeah, they're like. This person was definitely like, let's bring the low effort, like, let's get the people the cakes they deserve as soon as possible with as little effort. And like, I love a thing that's like all the equipment you need. And the first one's like an oven.
Nice.
It's very easy. Thank you for like making me actually bake. Last night I got a food for dinner. And as I was in the oven, I like made a cake and then I was sitting around waiting for dinner to finish cooking. And I was like, I've never made a baking thing that was done before
dinner. Yeah.
Before dinner.
That's awesome. I'm convinced.
I just sat there and was like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a what's making me happy that is in a similar vein, but way shittier.
Okay. Well, you've got me sold.
Can't wait to hear it. Wow.
And I'll make this quick. So my mother-in-law is a wonderful lady, and she volunteers for a church thing where they do like a food pantry. And one of the weird things about that is that they just continually have like extra stuff that I guess she just brings home with her in bulk. So like, weird stuff like here's a 6-pound bag of oatmeal, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
and every time she visits, she brings us stuff, and sometimes it's great, and other times it's like completely unusable, like totally like way too much of a thing that you'd never actually be able to use, like 6-pound blocks of cream cheese that's like okay cream cheese, but someone clearly froze it and rethawed it, that kind of thing, where you're like, what do I have to do to 6 pounds of cream cheese to like refresh it? Anyway, I'm complaining now, which is ridiculous. What I'm about to say is that the last time that she visited, one of the things she brought us was a giant sealed store pack of, I'm going to show you these, Mr. Goodbar giant size bars.
Oh, I love those though.
And this is just the wrapper, so I'm holding it up.
It's just
it's a big.
There is you said it's just the wrapper. I'm like, there is a candy bar inside there, right?
Oh well, hang on. Here's the point.
All right, Raygan has taken off his headphones. He's going into his little cabinet here. He's back. He's got another Mr. Goodbar.
I'm down to my last one.
How many?
Oh.
I think these were cast-offs because they're all kind of cracked in unsellable ways. But that doesn't matter to me. In fact, it's better because then I can convince myself that I'm not going to eat just one square, because they don't break easily into squares. They're in weird triangles, right? So I think there were like 12 of these, and I'm down to one. And we had this whole it was a problem when they first showed up. We put them into the pantry. And I ended up eating, they're big, and I ended up eating like 3 in 4 days or something like that. Like an absurd amount of these chocolate. And Mr. Goodbar is not my favorite chocolate candy.
It's one of my favorites.
I like a Mr.
It's a good one, right?
Yeah.
It's a good one.
It's a good bar.
And it is. It's a good bar. And so when I'd eaten too many of them all at once, and in fact made myself sick one day, I told my wife, like, you need to hide these from me, please. And so very kindly, she took them out of the pantry and she hid them somewhere in the house. And then that meant that for, I think it was 2 weeks, I was hunting.
Raygan, you are a child.
Every now and then, I was on the lookout, and every now and then, a new Mr. Goodbar would show up on my desk,
like a treat.
Like a treat, I guess I did something right.
I will never.
And one of these would show up.
Every once in a while, we get a little peek into the life of Raygan and his wife, and I don't know what to do with this information, but this is just a little bit more that tells the story of Raygan's family life.
So the short version is a few weeks ago. Well, let me see. I actually don't know the timeline on this. It's all blended together. What is time?
Mr. Goodbar Hayes has descended across the fog of war.
I found them in the hallway closet up behind the coats, and I was like, oh, finally the stash is mine. But then I realized, I can't do this. Last time I ate too many Mr. Goodbars and I made myself sick. So I texted my wife and I told her, hey, I found the Mr. Goodbars. You need to hide them again. And so she did. She hid them again in a different place in the house. I found them again, and we were down to 3 Mr. Goodbars. I don't know, over the weekend. And this time I decided I'm not going to tell her. And so I've decided I'm just going through. I'm down to my last one here. Last Mr. Goodbar, and a giant size, just to be clear. Listeners, you cannot see this, but this is easily like a foot long Mr. Goodbar.
It's a big Mr. Goodbar.
It's very large.
Mr. Big Bar.
More than a person should eat.
How many Mr. Goodbars do we need for the short con?
Can you make a snacking cake out of some Mr. Goodbars?
I could probably make a Mr. Goodbar flavored snacking cake.
Well, Raygan, this is the best story you've ever told. One time I was at a farmer's market and they were closing up shop, and I bought 10 pounds of bananas for $2. I felt like I couldn't. They were like, do you want 10 pounds of bananas? I said, no, I don't want 10 pounds of bananas. They said $2. And then You got yourself a.
It's just like me buying Infinite Jest because it was on sale for $1.
Yeah, you've got
and
yourself.
Then I was like, all I've done is buy.
I was like, what
all
am I
I've
going
done
to
is
do?
buy a book I'm not going to read.
I had so many bananas. 10 pounds of bananas is a lot of bananas.
What does 10 pounds of bananas look like?
It was a big old box. It was like it was a big old crate, that I then had to. I feel like he didn't want to carry it to their truck or something, and was just like,
oh my gosh.
So I bought 10 pounds of bananas for $2, and it's still a great deal. I think I ate more bananas in that like 2 days that they're good, that I was like giving bananas to anyone like, hey, thanks for hanging out. Here's a couple bananas for the road,
Here's your pound of bananas.
Hey, you want 5 or 7 bananas? I got a stash I'm trying to move. Well,
my kids eat so many bananas, man.
Now I was like 20 when I bought 10 pounds of bananas. So I had, it was.
I would probably buy 10 pounds of bananas now. Like we go through bananas like nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have 2 adults in my household, and my husband is incredibly paranoid that bananas are going to go like slightly bad at any point of time. In which case I'm like, we could make banana bread. Like that's what we do.
Yeah.
When we get like 3 to 6 frozen bananas, like we put them in the freezer and then I eventually make banana bread. Like we've never had a problem with this, but he's terrified of buying more than 3 or 4 bananas at a time. And then they're gone in 2 days because we each eat 2 bananas. And then he's like, where did the bananas go? Like, I was like, buy more than 4.
Well, your husband works with monkeys too, right? So maybe there's some sort of, I don't,
maybe
there's something going on here.
Yeah. It's like a combination of banana panic and banana scarcity.
Yeah.
I don't know how to solve for either problem.
I think 10 pounds of bananas for $2 might be the.
I think we would be set. Except, can you imagine the terror? He'd be like, they're all going to go
my God. It's a nightmare.
It's his nightmare. Yeah. It's his worst. We have a tiny freezer too. So he'd just be like, they don't fit.
Dear God.
Dear God.
Nate, what's making you happy this week?
Yeah, Nate, please rescue us from this madness.
This conversation, I'll be quick. So part of the reason I wasn't on the show a couple weeks ago is I did something I've never done before. I went skiing, and it was a ton of fun. I have never done it before. I've never done anything even really like it that much. Any sort of winter sport.
Where did you go?
Copper Mountain in outside at like about an hour and a half from Denver.
Nice.
And it was I really committed. It was a 4-day skiing trip, 4 days at Copper Mountain. And I proceeded to fall down a mountain for, I'll say 3 days straight. I did by the end, I managed to do a full green without falling, which felt like an accomplishment because on day 2, I couldn't go more than, and day 2, I could not go more than like 15 feet without falling. And I was deeply bruised in many places. But it was a beautiful time, and it was good to get out and do something like that. I've been relatively inside for, a little while now, and doing something completely out of my comfort zone like that was a ton of fun. And I hope to do it again sometime. It'll probably be a while, but it was a ton of fun.
I went skiing a couple of times when I was living in Colorado, and yeah, it's definitely like not something that I think I'm gonna like incorporate into my yearly calendar or anything. I haven't gone back since moving out of Colorado, but it was really fun. It was really surprisingly fun. So yeah.
Maybe just take a moment to say, like, I said cakes. Raygan said eating like 18 pounds of Mr. Good bars. And Nate's like, I enjoyed athletic pursuits.
Yeah, for the first time in like, a decade. So most of the time, here, do you want me to
take the credit?
Do you want me to grab the 5-pound bag of Smarties I bought on Amazon like a week or two ago?
Yeah, please. If it's making you happy.
It's like, right. I almost pivoted to the giant bag of Smarties that I bought based off of where this conversation was going. So
nice. Well, Listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find our show on the internet at www.theshortgame.net, where you'll find all the ways to contact us, our contact form. You'll find the links to our Patreon, patreon.com/theshortgame. Other stuff on our website as well. Of course, you can also, patrons get immediate access to our Discord, which is where we talk about the show. You can talk to us about the large volumes of food products that you've purchased recently. We always love to talk about food.
Love a bulk purchase.
Yeah, love a large purchase of bananas. And of course, if you back at the $5 level, even if just for a month, which is totally fine, I will send you stickers with the beautiful Short Game logo on them, and you can put them on whatever you want, including your box of bananas. And let's see, you can find our show on Twitter at _shortgame, or you can find me on Twitter at RayganK. That's RayGanK. Laura, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Laura J. Nash.
And Nate, where can people find you?
On Twitter at NateSTL.
And thank you once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.